Okay, so folks, what we're going to look at tonight is using this image of the apple, and we're going to use between a combination of shapes and the pen tool, etc., to recreate a kind of vector version of this apple. We'll just minimise this for you just now. Now you'll find this image on Moodle. I've put it here under the tutorial section, so you find the image here, which you can open up and then save. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin by creating a new shape layer. Now, if I create a new layer and start drawing with the shape, it's going to just create a new shape on top of that, so I don't actually need to create a new layer. What I'm going to do is start off with selecting my pen tool and making sure that I'm on shape. Okay, now for just now, I'm just going to choose kind of red fill colour, and I'm just going to start clicking and dragging to create this shape of the apple. So I'm going to start up here. If I click and drag, remember I can start to build my curves. Okay, I'm just pulling these handles out. Okay, and remember if I can hold Command on the Mac, Control on a PC, I can tweak these Bezier handles to suit. If I want to get rid of these, or this particular handle, so it doesn't affect the rest of this curve, I can just Alt-click on that point and it disappears. Okay, so I'm just going to continue to click and drag, Alt-click, click and drag, Alt-click, click and drag, Alt-click, click and drag. I'm just going to click and drag this wee point here. Alt-click, click and drag, Alt-click, click and drag, Alt-click. I'm going to try and jump to up here and see if I can just create a curve here. Alt-click. Now, because I'm going to be drawing the leaf on top of this shape, it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, I want to come back up to here, but I'm going to create a kind of midpoint before I connect and complete my shape. So I'm just going to click and drag, trying to follow the outline of the apple as best I can. So I can use my Command key to get my direct selection tool, and what I'm going to do is just come up to here and close the shape, and there we go. Now I've got a kind of rough apple shape. Now if I want to just check the outline, I've done it as best as I could, but if I want to check the outline, what I can do is I can just drop the opacity of this layer, and you will be able to see through this shape layer the image underneath it. And that will allow us to go back and tweak and make any changes. I'm quite happy with how it stands just now, but remember you can either change to your direct selection tool or hold down Command and click on the path, and you can select any one of these and start tweaking them with the Bezier handles. Okay, so that's me creating my generic shape of the apple, and what I'm going to do is just call this apple body. Okay, now I can click off of this because I don't want to have that selected. I'm planning on creating a kind of a new shape, and what we're going to do is we're going to deal with the stalk here to begin with. Okay, so if I grab my pen tool, and again I'm just going to make sure that because this path was selected there, it would have changed the colour. So if I grab my pen tool, I'm going to choose a kind of browny colour for this stalk, and I'm just going to start at the bottom here. I'm just going to click and drag slightly, click and drag slightly, do the same thing here, and then in here, down to here, and then close that. And there's a kind of rough idea of the stalk, and I could go back and again I could edit that. Selecting my points. Oh, sorry, I just removed a point there. So remember to hold down Command, you can tweak these Bezier handles, move the anchor points to suit. Okay, and I'm just looking for a kind of like representation at the moment. Okay, so something like that's going to do me, and I'll just call that my stock. Okay, so I'm just going to, again, deselect that path so that I've got all my shapes. At the moment this is at 100% opacity. I can go back to my apple body, bring that up to 100% opacity, and that's what I've got so far. So if I hide the background layer, this is what I've began to generate. So now what we'll do is we're going to create this leaf, and to help me out, I'm just going to hide the apple body layer. I'm just going to hide the stock layer. Okay, so I'm going to be creating a new shape, so I'm going to get my pen tool. I'm going to choose a kind of greeny colour, something not too dissimilar to what we have here. And I'm just going to click and drag. Maybe sick of me saying this, but go a wee bit quicker this time because I'm just trying to create this generic leaf shape. You'll notice that these wee points down here, I didn't really click and drag, I was just putting my points down to suit. So I'm just looking here for where these curves are generated and created. I'm just going to close the shape there, okay? Again, remember, I can select these points and tweak them to suit. Okay, but that's giving me the rough kind of leaf shape that I'm looking for. Okay, so I'll reveal these layers and hide that, and so far it's starting to come together quite nicely. Okay, now what we can start doing is adding a bit more depth and some more tone to these shapes, and I'll give you an example of what I mean. If I was to create a new shape layer, and I'm just going to deselect that again because I don't want that path selected, but I'll hide the apple. What I'm talking about here is trying to create this kind of indent, this kind of shadow effect. So what I'm going to do is just create a shape on top of this. So I'm going to use my pen tool again, and this time I'm going to create a kind of darker shade of the red. Now it might be too dark, but we can always edit it later if needs be. So with my pen tool, I'm just going to click here, click and drag. I'm going to click here and drag and come back and close the shape. Okay, again, using my direct selection tool, I can edit this shape with the Bezier handles. Okay, and let me just reveal this so you can see what I've done. Now, I can't see that at the moment because it's behind the apple body, so I'm just going to switch these around. And you can see I've started to create this kind of tone. Now I could do the same thing on top of the leaf layer, just making sure that's not selected. Start generating the kind of pattern down the middle and with various different shapes. I can also move the stock behind this if I think that would look a bit better. Or if I'm trying to get these lines maybe to meet up, that's where I might want to go back to this. And if I just zoom in, oh, sorry, just click off there. Use my direct selection tool. I could move these points to meet the line of the shadow here. Okay, just click off of that and zoom out so we can see that. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the pen tool again, make sure that that path isn't selected, which it is at the moment. And I'm going to use the pen tool, or in fact what we'll do is we'll maybe use the shape tool because we haven't really covered the shapes. Now the shapes are essentially doing the same thing that they're using anchor points, but this time they're just building shapes for us as opposed to us defining where the anchor points are with the pen tool. So I'm going to use my ellipse tool and I'm going to change that to white, and I'm just going to draw a kind of oval shape. Okay, and you'll notice that that's appeared there. I'm going to call this highlight. Okay, now what I can do is I can transform this shape, so I can go to Edit, Transform, and I'm going to go to Free Transform, so that gives me the option to scale or rotate, and I'm just going to effectively try and create this kind of highlight, just making sure I've got the right transform technique selected there. So if I just resize this and apply that, there's my highlights. Now again, I can reduce the opacity of this layer to maybe make it a bit more lifelike. Similarly, what I could do is I could apply an effect and a filter effect. Now we've not really covered these, and we will cover them a bit further, but if I go into filter, you'll notice that these options are greyed out, and the reason why is because the way that this is represented, this vector shape, it won't allow me to apply any of these filters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this layer and rasterize the layer, which is going to convert it to bitmap quality, or bitmap properties rather, which when I now go to filter, you'll notice that these all light up, and I'm looking to concentrate on a blur, and if I select a Gaussian blur, you'll see that that's starting to blur and soften this shape that I've created. Now if I OK that, it's starting to become a wee bit more lifelike. Now there's a bit of a contrast really when you look at this shape compared to the rest of the image, with everything else being so sharp and having this bitmap. There you see the difference, the standing out between vector and bitmap graphics, but I thought I would try this anyway just to show you. Now I can do the same thing. If I go to Command T for transform, you'll notice up the top here I have the warp options. What this allows us to do is to pull in various points using this grid to alter the shape. I'm just going to tweak these and pull them in just to try and create that kind of round shape of the apple and this highlight. If I just tick that to commit to it, you see what I've done there. Again, I can reduce the opacity of it just to have it coming through slightly. Now you'll notice I've started to build up all of these layers, and when it starts getting a bit confusing, I could create a group. Oh, I've done two there, we only need the one. I'm just going to call this my apple. Now what I can do is I can select these layers one by one and move them into the group, but what I'm going to do is hold down Shift and select all of these layers which make up the apple, and I'm going to drag them up and just drop them in that folder, and you'll notice they all indent, which means that when I collapse this group, everything I've created there is contained within this apple folder. So I can hide the background layer, and this is what I have generated, which would allow me then to go further. For example, I might create I'll just use this foreground colour and create, in fact what we'll do is we'll use a rectangle tool and we'll create a gradient fill, and perhaps not use this blue and red. We'll select it to begin with, but I'll perhaps change the colour here. So if I just double click on the colour picker, choose this kind of aqua colour, and again we'll choose the red, change the red here. Just do something like this. Okay, so when I now draw my shape, you'll notice that that's filled for me, and I've actually cut off a wee bit there, so I can always transform this. And T is going to allow me to transform it, and I'm just going to pull it out slightly here so that it fits the full image, and I'll commit to transform. Now again, it's hidden everything in the Apple folder here, so I can just drag this and drop it underneath, making sure that I don't drop it into the folder. I'm just dropping it so that it's underneath, and now you can see my apple sitting on top of the rectangle tool. Okay, so we're going to try that tonight and see how we go on with it, and we'll come back, we'll maybe add a couple of wee points on it, but this process of layering and building things up and having it organised the way that I've done so can really be applied to any kind of shape or image you're planning on replicating or drawing. So you can give that a wee try and see how you get on. and we can try applying that to maybe some other images in future.